Chapter 22. The Fight of Gideon and the Flight of Midian. Judges 6-7. Have you ever noticed in the Bible that God's people get in trouble when they think they are strong, but that God is strong for his people when they know they're in trouble? Up and down, down and up. God rescues, the people rebel. God disciplines, the people despair. God brings deliverance, and the whole thing starts over again. This pattern was especially true in the time of the Judges. After Moses and Joshua, but before kings like Saul and David and Solomon, Israel was ruled by judges. These judges didn't wear black robes and funny white wigs and bang gavels. They were warriors who led the people, often to great victory, till God's people disobeyed. Then God sent their enemies to humble them until they learned to trust God again, which sometimes they did, but overall they didn't. The time of the Judges was a time when everyone did what was right in their own eyes. That may sound like the best way to live, calling our own shots and deciding what's right and wrong for ourselves, but it's actually the worst way to live. Serving ourselves leads to broken hearts, broken families, and broken promises. Our promises, that is, not God's. All of God's promises are true as true can be. God loves to humble the proud and save the humble. He loves to help the little guy or girl and show himself strong when we are weak. Take Gideon, for example. The Lord called him a mighty warrior, but when God found him, Gideon was hiding from his enemies. God told him to go out and save Israel from Midian, but Gideon said, "I'm too puny." "So what?" God said. "I will be with you." Still, Gideon wasn't always sure that God would really be with him. Sometimes he would try to be brave, but he was only brave at night when no one could see him. So he asked for a sign. "God, will you make my fleece wet and the ground dry?" How about the opposite? "God, will you make the fleece dry and the ground wet?" Even though Gideon should have trusted God already, the Lord was gracious to do what Gideon asked. Finally, Gideon was ready to go out and fight the Midianites. But first he had to get rid of some men. Not the Midianites, but his own. Gideon's army was too big, and God wanted a little army so that no one would doubt he was the real warrior. So Gideon's fighting men went from 22,000 to 10,000 to 300. That's not much of an army, but it was more than enough for God. When Gideon and his men blew their trumpets and smashed their jars, the people of Midian got scared and ran away. Gideon chased them down and captured their princes. It was a total rout. A big day for Gideon and a bigger day for God.